Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Golf Podcast. This is episode number 232. Last week, we had a terrific interview with Bob Voki, the Voke. He was on the show. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go back and listen to it, whether you listen to it in the Golficity app or on YouTube or on golficity.com. What a great experience it was, talking to the man himself. And good segue into this week, because we're going to be talking about how to stick more wedge shots in tight. And here's the thing I've come to realize too, Mike, especially since we've started to put the podcast on YouTube, we've got a lot, week after week, I seem to have a lot of new listeners, which I love. I love it, getting the show to new audiences and things like that. But because, so many people are new to the show, I want to make sure we bring some people up to speed and just kind of disclaim that Mike and I, we're not professional golfers. We're not scratch golfers. We're not teaching professionals. The theory and the idea about what we do here when we share instruction is very simple. It's that we're going out, we're learning from top instructors, we're doing the research, we're doing whatever it takes to try to make our game better. And if it's something that we find that works for us, we're going to bring it to you guys. Because the idea is if we can do it, you can do it. So that's the idea. When we talk instruction, this is stuff that we've researched, stuff that we've tested firsthand, and then we try to disseminate it here. So I want to make sure everybody understands that. Again, we're not, teaching pros, but we're guys who are learning the game. We're out there grinding like you guys are week in and week out. And if we do find something, I want to make sure that we share it. So that's going to be a big part of tonight's episode. We're going to talk about some things that we've been working on, getting a little bit tighter with those wedge shots, something that's been really, Mike, if you agree with me, much, much easier since we, switched over to the Voki Sm7s, right?
Biggest improvement in my game, 100 yards and in. Absolutely.
And you know what? It was so cool what Voke said last week when he was like, why he even loves the short game is because it's something you can do at any age. He's like, even at his age, he's like, you may not be able to swing a driver like you used to. He probably still outdrive us, but anyway, right. Swing a driver like you used to, but he's like, but even at his age, he's like, you can still make a full swing shot from 100 yards and in, and you can really still craft that area of your game. So I thought that was a really cool thing. The other kind of cool story, and it's a little backstory I wanted to share with everybody. And it just kind of goes to show you what kind of guy he is and how down to earth and how cool Bob Voki is. We had gotten about 5 minutes into that interview and we were speaking to him in his office. And all of a sudden you hear him just kind of get interrupted by someone, and they're opening his door and they're coming in. Long story short, the fire alarm was going off in the building and they had to immediately evacuate. And, most times you would think somebody, at his level, busy guy, busy schedule, probably being pulled in a million different directions, would be like, guys, I have to cancel. We'll have to do this again. But he was so dedicated to it. And he said, no, I'll call you guys in 15 minutes. He flew home and he called us from his home phone to make sure that we could still do the interview. And I was like, that tells you a lot about a person right there.
Oh, absolutely. And he definitely flew home because he literally got home in about 15 minutes.
He did.
And we were right back on the recording. And it's a shame because he was flowing. He was going into a great story. Yeah. He gave us the more abbreviated version of it on the actual episode. But what a guy. I thought we lost him after that, to be honest with you.
Me too. But yeah, what a terrific guy. And I love that when you can sense like the passion coming through, the passion for the game and for what he does in his career. You could all sense that. So anybody who missed that episode, make sure you go back and listen to it, or you can also watch that on YouTube. Let's talk real quick about the Golficity Virtual Open. A huge success this year, Mike. Huge success. And as of us recording this right now, there are about 5 hours left in the Open. By the time this drops, it'll have been over, and we're going to start randomly selecting those door prize winners. But we had last year, we had a little over 300 participants. This year, as of right now, I think we've got about 410, 415, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
Which I think is excellent. It just shows that it just keeps growing. As we had in the past, there's some hiccups here and there. Some people had a little bit of trouble, but overall, for 400 people who logged their round, for the 5 or 6 that messaged us and said they had a little bit of trouble with whatever it may be, using the app, navigating the app, I think that's a pretty low percentage overall. And I think we're just going to keep working and getting better at it. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of control over it. Ultimately 18 Birdies is going to be is physically running it in their app, but they help us with the admin and setting it up and things like that. So it continues to be successful. I think I know we're gonna continue to do this year over year, because every year it's a lot of fun. Every year it's nice to hear the stories, the different courses people played, the ups and the downs. Some people saying it was their worst round ever. Some people saying it was their best round. But either way, it's a fun experience to get out there, play, see yourself on a live leaderboard, get to watch your buddies on a live leaderboard. We've got the talking about it in the Facebook group. So it was a terrific overall event, and I can't wait to give those great prizes out, which we're going to be, again, randomly selecting. And then what we're also going to do, we talked about playing for bragging rights. We're going to, on the next episode, when everything wraps up and the leaderboards are finalized, Mike, you and I will shout out some of the best scores here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no doubt. So speaking of other things that we're looking forward to, we've got a lot coming up. Tomorrow, you and I are heading back to Golf and Body, one of our favorite spots in New York City. We're going to be hanging out with Eric Anders Lang. We're going to interview him. We're going to have that interview on the YouTube channel. We're also going to have that on the podcast coming up. And that's one that I'm super excited for, because I feel like we're seeing his face everywhere lately, and I want to get the backstory, find out a little bit more about him and how he got his start and where he's going.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been a recent fan, just kind of latching onto some of the content he's been putting out on his social media platforms, some of the stuff he's doing with Scratch TV, Golf and Body. It's a great place. We've been there. We've shot some videos there, done club fittings there. That's where we met Paige Sporanic, 18 Birdies Media Day. A lot of cool history for us there. And you know what, Frank? Tomorrow's supposed to be like 95 degrees, feels like 100. We were going to do this interview with Eric on the course. I'm glad we're going to be in the air conditioning tomorrow.
It's going to be, it'll be nice to be indoors for this one.
Yep.
But, a couple things, like, first of all, his Adventures in Golf series, he's done 2 seasons of that for Scratch.
And that's a cool story, man. I mean, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I mean, I want to ask him tomorrow about, some of the favorite places he's been just playing golf.
Because he's been everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, he's played golf, and I want to ask him about this, because he's played everywhere from Compton to Augusta. He played in the streets of Mumbai. It's pretty cool. But I think that the story behind it that he's ultimately trying to tell is my favorite part about it. And that's that golf can be a game for everyone. He's showing how at any walk of life, at any, financial picture or whatever, there's a way to find a way to play this. I think during that one where he played in Compton, I remember he went to a flea market and bought a set of clubs for $3 just to kind of prove that it can be done and you can enjoy the game and you can play. So that's going to be really cool. And then the other thing too is his Be the Ball documentary, which we've been kind of like watching as it progressed along. He's been working on that for a couple of years now. I want to find out more about that, because he really dives into the mental game and specifically meditation. Meditation is something that I've personally been doing for 5 years now, believe it or not. I actually first learned meditation while doing my MBA. One of my professors had it as a requirement of the course. And at first I thought, like, all right, I'll just kind of power through. And then all of a sudden, like, just doing it daily as the requirement, I found like 2 weeks in, I got hooked, and I never looked back. So, and I've seen improvements in all areas of my life, and I do use it with golf. So I want to get his take on that. And then the other thing is we've got the Northern Trust. That's going to be next Thursday. So as of when this podcast drops on Sunday, it's this coming week. So again, if anyone is going to be there at Ridgewood Country Club in Paramus, make sure you hit us up. Get us on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Which, by the way, I know you and we've been diving a little bit more into our personal Instagrams, just to kind of share our own stories of what's going on. So if anybody wants to follow what Mike's doing, Mike is at MikeFaz4, MikeFas 4. And I'm at Frank Fasano Jr. It's last name Fasano Jr. So that's on Twitter and Instagram, so you can catch us there. But anyway, DM us. You can DM us on the Golficity account too. We're going to try to meet up with as many of you guys as we can who are going to be there. We're going to be there Thursday. Mike's going to be there through most of the week. Yeah,
Monday through Friday I'll be there. I'm actually taking a tour of the Titleist van on Wednesday. I want to see some of the new things, the new drivers, talk to some of the folks in there. You and I are going to be filming and walking the course during tournament play. By the way, with Tiger in town, that gallery Thursday is going to be ridiculous. Yeah, so I plan on being there all week. Weekend, unfortunately, not, but all week I'll be there. So definitely hit me up. Sure.
Speaking of galleries, how about the PGA Championship? I haven't seen anything like that, and we know we haven't seen anything like that in years because we did an article on it on Golficity where it's been a decade since we've seen viewership like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there was no standing room around entire par fours that Tiger was on.
Yeah, how incredible! How incredible is it, man? It's good. It's so good.
It's just incredible, and it's so good for the game. And then you've got stuff like look at Koepka, what he's doing, 2 majors this year. I mean, he performing on the biggest stages. He certainly comes to play at big events, and to have Tiger on your heels and hear those crowds, and he just stayed his foot on the pedal until he won that thing. Wow.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this up real quick because you're talking about firepower with Koepka. I'm thinking about this Ryder Cup team. Yeah. I mean, it's seriously just going to be a powerhouse probably for years to come now with, listen, it's Koepka, DJ, JT, Reed, Bubba Watson, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, Webb Simpson are the 8 guaranteed, and then of course Tiger will be up there.
Well, listen, the people are arguing like, do you do Tiger as a captain's pick? And
no, I'm sorry. Say that Tiger as a captain's pick or what else?
Oh, well, in order to put him in as a captain's pick.
Well, I think at this point that's the only way he can get in, right? Isn't it?
Right. Yep. He's not going to make it on points, and people are saying like on the fence whether you put him in or not. Like to me, it's like a no brainer. How do you not put him in? Because the amount of the amount of experience he brings to it, and the fact that, hey man, look at the way I know he doesn't have a win yet, but I feel like every week now we see Tiger in the top 5, top 10 at the biggest events. With the biggest fields, there's no doubt in my mind he has proved that he can be in competition. So I would not in any way hesitate if I was if it was my pick, I'd put him in.
Yeah, I think he'll be on the team for sure. I mean, what a storyline that is. I don't know when they make those captain's picks. I think it's maybe after the Northern Trust. So I'm curious to see what he does here in Ridgewood. Maybe he keeps the momentum. I'm pretty sure he'll be playing in Paris.
Because he is knocking on the door. So. Yeah. So that was, really cool stuff there. And then I know before we jump into the instruction portion, we wanted to shout out a couple different people from the Facebook group, which by the way, we are now over 1,000 members there. How cool was that?
It's cool, man. 1,032 and growing by many, many per day. So thank you. We really appreciate it. It's a cool community. Glad to have everyone a part of it.
And how cool was it that it was the members of the group who were making that hard push to get us over 1,000?
Yeah, it was Chris, I believe. I don't remember his last name. Chris R, I think, and he made this solid push. He's, we were like 30 away. He said, "Come on, folks, tag a buddy. We all have one. Let's get this group up." And sure enough, we got there. So awesome stuff.
Really cool stuff.
The Golficity Army. I'm liking that more and
more. It's kind of like trickling into my mind that I kind of like the Golficity Army. Yeah. But I know you had one you wanted to highlight, right?
Yeah, actually, Jimmy Truong. He's a new member of the Facebook group. Just a couple of days ago, he said, "I want to shout out and say thanks to this podcast that I've finally taken the sport seriously enough to get a fitting at my local golf town. In doing so, I found out that my clubs, this is great, have been too short for me since forever. Common problem that we all have, right?
Yeah, too short or too long for a lot. Yep.
Exactly. I ended up picking up a used demo set in my proper length, chunking and topping them all day long, trying to readjust. And he goes on and on about how it's really helped him, But he said at the end, I adopted that waggle, which is something that I have since you and I talked about it about 10 episodes ago.
Yeah, man.
And then he says, keep up the great podcast. So, hey, Jimmy, thank you so much for tuning in, man. Appreciate the kind note.
That was great stuff. And then the other thing, I like when these good questions come in. Just saw this just a couple hours ago. Daniel Meyer said, he said he feels like he's hitting his shots quite well with good distance control, but he's really struggling with directional control. And he's saying that's happening where he's going either left or right on a target. And he's also having the same experience even with putts. And he says is after he hits a shot, that's when he figured out his alignment he was out of alignment. So he was wondering, like, how can he master that? And this is something that I jumped right in there with a comment because it's something that I could so relate to. I was having the same problem a couple of years ago. And one thing that I changed that it's like such a simple change. I think it's more the discipline to remember to do it every time, but it's just a tip I learned. And ever since I've done that, my aim has been so much better. And it's just simply this: when you're taking your aim at a target, always remember to set that club face at the target first and then set the rest of your body to match that club face. So what happens a lot of times, people start setting their shoulders or whatever to aiming at the target, and then the club face is like an afterthought. If you notice, a lot of the pros will do this exact same thing. They'll do whatever they need to do as part of their pre-shot routine, and then they'll lay that club face down right next to the ball. They'll look down the line and make sure that it's lined at their target. And targets can be different things. It's a whole big discussion. Some people like a target very close. Some people like the ultimate target, whatever it is. But whatever it is, set that target. And this is something we've talked about on the podcast before, but set that club face to the target line, and then take the rest of your stance.
Sure.
Even take the rest of your grip and everything like that. And then just make sure you do not move that club face from that target line after that. Now you can still do your waggle or whatever it may be, as long as you stay aligned. But that made a dramatic difference for me. And I've actually, when it comes to discipline and reminding yourself to do these things, I find that the best way to do that is to make it part of your pre-shot routine. I've talked here before about pre-shot routine should not be something that changes from shot to shot. Hammer it out in your mind that this is what your routine is going to be, and then do the same thing over and over. Again, no different than a basketball player taking a foul shot, right?
Yeah, true.
They do the same thing, the same number of bounces, the same everything every time. And that's what it kind of sets you up, so you have that consistency. So consistency is hard enough in this game. So if there's something you can do to set that rhythm, that's part of it. So part of my pre-shot routine is, once I go up to address that ball, the first thing I do, and I do this with a putter too, set that club face right where you want it on line to your target, then set your rest of your body to that. So Daniel, give that a try if you're not doing it already, and then report back to us. Let us know in the group if it's working for you. But that's a big one for me. I've always had success with that. All right, so let's do a couple quick words from our sponsors. Then I want to talk about how we can stick more of those wedge shots in tight. And this is a really good segue here. Speaking of wedges, this podcast, it's sponsored by Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. And as we talked about before, Mike, we had Bob on the show last week. So I want to mention the Voki Sm7 wedges in a little bit more detail. The new Voki design Sm7 wedges are Voke's most advanced design ever. These bad boys, they're born from tour validated technology. It inspires complete confidence. I love how Bob and his team created a more advanced progressive center of gravity, and those spin milled grooves which offer more precision, trajectory, distance, and that spin control we're all after.
Yeah, I mean, you're not kidding, Frank. I mean, the Voki design Sm7 wedges, they were designed to deliver shot-making versatility, I mean, for all level of golfers. I mean, I just mentioned this before. Since getting these new Titleist clubs, the biggest improvement in my game has been from 100 yards and in, hands down. And I love how Voke offers 6 tour-proven grinds. He talked about them a little bit last week, but 6 tour grinds to allow any golfer, basically for their particular swing, for any type of course condition, whatever part of the world you're in. I mean, he's got a grind for you. There's the F grind, which is that all-purpose grind for full wedge shots. And then there's the M grind, which is the multi-purpose grind for versatility. There's an S grind, and there's a K grind, and there's even the L grind, which offers, the lowest bounce for skilled shot makers.
Yeah, and don't let that overwhelm you. It's actually quite easy. There's 2 things that I would definitely recommend everybody do. Either go to a free Titleist Thursday fitting, because a lot of people ask us how much that fitting costs. If you want to, dip your toe into it, a great place to start is they're free. Look for a Titleist fitting near you. Or the other thing you can do is use the Wedge Selector tool on Voki.com. It asks you a couple quick questions, and it's going to really help you identify which grind is going to be right for you. There's really nothing like the feeling of knowing you can execute every shot type when you need it most. The new Voki design Sm7 wedges, know your letter, hit your number. And Mike, our other sponsor this week is Tommy John. And Mike, how amazing are these new threads?
Yeah, man, I am loving them. I can't get enough of this stuff.
Actually, the funny little backstory is Tommy John, I first got introduced to them when they had sponsored the podcast about 2 years ago. And I'm going to tell you what, there was no going back for me. No going back. Once you feel that comfort, I mean, it's my favorite stuff. You saw me, I saw you over the weekend. I had my brand new Second Skin Henley t-shirt, and we were playing with the kids and whatever, and I thought one of them like ripped my shirt, and I was like gonna cry because it's my favorite shirt. When I joke around, it's like, remember in Seinfeld when they talk about the button being out of place or whatever?
Yes.
That shirt? This is like the opposite of that. Like everything is the sleeve length is perfect, the cut, the overall length, the feel. I love it. It's great stuff.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that exactly what Tommy John does is they obsess over every little detail and stitch, and they've got those proprietary fabrics that perform like nothing you've ever worn before. It's like nothing I've felt before. Tommy John's men and women's underwear, they have that no wedgie guarantee, and it's a comfortable stay put waistband, which is it's great when you're playing golf. Trust me, you don't want to be adjusting anything. They're made from a range of fabrics. They're luxuriously soft. They're feather light. They're moisture wicking, breathable. They move with you, not against you. It's great stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the kids. Your 4-year-old daughter, when she jumped on your back and was pulling on the shirt, you were like, "No, get off the shirt! Don't ruin my shirt."
That's right.
So it shows you how much you love it. I love it. I mean, let me tell you, the days of those briefs bunching and riding up, guys. Listen, it's over. Tommy John is so confident in the underwear. I mean, listen, if you don't love your first pair, get this: you'll get a full refund with their best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Honestly, you're never going to return them. I mean, I'm telling you right now. Today, I wore them on a hot 95-degree day. And let me tell you something, guys. A little more comfort, quote, down there, goes a real long way. I'm telling you. And even the undershirts underneath the suit shirt or whatever, they're form-fitting. They feel good, breathable material. So hurry to TommyJohn.com/golf for 20% off your first order. That's TommyJohn.com/golf for 20% off. TommyJohn.com/golf.
Okay, Mike, so we're going to talk about how to stick those wedge shots in tight. And I think this is a real key if you want to start pouring in birdies.
Yep.
Because, and especially we're big on tracking stats. We've talked about it before. I think stats often are enlightening on areas of your game you may not have seen before. We're going to be even testing some new stat trackers coming up really soon because I want to always make sure we're testing out whatever the latest technology is because I love keeping that information. But the reality is I think a lot of people get fooled when they think they look maybe just at the number of putts and they're thinking they're 3-putting too much or whatever it may be, or they're missing opportunities, or they say I'm hitting greens in regulation, but I'm still not making birdies or whatever it may be. And largely that often comes from the fact that you're just not getting those wedge shots in tight. So if you can get to a point where you can really rely on your wedge game and really get as deadly as possible from 100 yards and in, it is going to transform your entire game because you'll be able to get a lot more aggressive with those longer shots, shots off the tee, longer hybrids, whatever it may be, where you're moving that ball closer to that scoring range as we talk about. Because if you know that you can really rely on it rather than being a part of your game you're worried about, when you can kind of like lean on that wedge game to be good, you can get more aggressive, tee to green. And it's a really great thing to have that feel. And I've really, in the past couple of years, really embraced the feel part of the game. Like so many people, I started off with the wow side, loving just like it's crushing it off the tee as far as you could and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But I started to really embrace like the beauty of the short game and just enjoying that fun game that happens from 100 yards and in. And when you start to get to that point and really kind of hone those skills, that's when the entire score starts to change for you. So let's talk a little bit about the ways you can do it. How can you do it? How can you get a little bit, get those wedge shots in a little bit tighter? One of the challenges that comes along with hitting wedge shots is that a lot of times you're going to need to do less than a full swing. And we did an entire episode, a couple of episodes back on how to really work on that less than full swing, because this is tough. I mean, this is where feel really comes in. Pretty much every other club in your bag, the distance it goes. And if you need a little bit more distance, you grab another, a little bit lower club, or you grab a higher club if you need less different distance, whatever it may be. But when you're maybe 100 yards to the hole, but your sand wedge is 90 and your pitching wedge is 115, what do you do? And the real option there is to hit that pitching wedge a little bit less than 100% effort. And that's where it can get tricky. We can get into things like deceleration, stuff like that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's a way, and I like this way of thinking about it, a way to simplify it is rather than working on this sliding scale of trying to hit a million different distances with your wedge, if you can go out there and make it a goal for yourself to have three different distances you're comfortable with covering with each of your wedges, that means you can cover, depending on how many wedges you carry, you can cover quite a wide range of distances. So let's say you worked on that with wedges, and let's say you carry 3 wedges in your bag. Like Voki says he carries 5.
Uh-huh.
But let's say you carry 3 in your bag, and then with each one, you went to the range and got comfortable hitting each wedge 3 different distances. That would be 9 total yardages that you could cover with with confidence. And by having those numbers dialed in, you'll always have something which is close. So rather than thinking of a club as your 100 club, maybe you can start to think of that club as, this is my 90, 100, or 110 club. Because I know how to hit those 3 distances. I just have to make small changes to my swing and I can hit those. And then the club below that, this is my 60-degree wedge is my 60, 70, 80 club, right? So now you're able to do that. And then if you needed to carry, let's say, 73 yards, you just kind of go a little bit off of that base rather than always trying to like hit these various numbers. So what you can do is each time you go to the range, spend a little bit of time working on your ability to produce these different shots and get used to these different distances. And if you can start to think of dialing it in that way, it can really help your game. And it just reminds me again, it's still fresh in my mind, our interview with Bob Voki, and he was saying, like, look how many times you go to a practice facility and the short game area is just empty.
Right.
It's because people don't work on it. And then when you don't work on it, it's unfamiliar and you get in there and it's a problem. And we've seen the complete opposite at the, PGA Tour level. When we go to these tour events, something that just because it's not on TV, you don't always see it from home, but these guys are out there just burning wedges, for long periods of time. And usually when I say long periods of time, usually after their round, we'll find that they'll go back to the practice range and they'll just be working on those shots, 50 yards, whatever it may be, because they know that's really where the money's made, so to speak.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me right now, and I talked about how good my game is getting from 100 and in. It is because the confidence is getting there, and I'm sweeping the carpet a little better on those tight lies, and I'm getting some more spin back on the ball. So those are all the components that are contributing to that statement that I've made twice already on this show.
Yeah.
The thing that's not working so well is my choice of wedge from my location. So a lot of us probably struggle with this. If you're 60 out, Frank, middle of the fairway, straight ahead is the green, 60 yards, what club are you going to use? You're going to knock down a 48 and hit it nice and light, or are you going to take a 60, or are you going to hit your 56? How do you know which one to use? Because I've been working on hitting less of the ones that cause me to come down steep. Mm-hmm. Like in that particular situation, a 75-yard shot or a 60-yard shot, I may take a 60 and hit it like 85, 90, but that changes the whole steepness of my swing. Whereas I feel more comfortable with that nice little 48, and I'll just take it back a little less, and I'll hit something a little low. It'll bounce before the green, come up, and then just stick and stop. So the question to me is, what do I go with here?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something we're going to talk about too, even in more depth in a minute, about choosing the lowest available path. Because a lot of times people will do that, and they'll just get that ball way up in the air. But the one thing you got to understand is, every time you go up high, there's more variables that are introduced for error. There's wind that comes into play. There's also, when there's no rollout, there's less control. It's where you have to land it where you want that ball to be. But if you can get it kind of rolling, you can control it a little bit more like a putt. But one thing that starts with that decision making is actually our next point, which is play the slope of the green. I think a lot of beginner golfers, they don't even conceptualize reading the green until they're up there with a putter in hand. But the reality is you can really start reading the green from a distance when you're playing that wedge approach shot. You can look for the basics idea of the slope. And you can start to get a feel for it by looking at the entire terrain. That was a great tip that we got when we were down in Florida working with that putting coach for Bay Hill. And he said, start your read by looking at the entire green. And I've been doing this since he said it. Envision it being like a torrential downpour and where the water would be running to. Sometimes if there's a stream or a body of water, it's usually pretty obvious that everything's going to be meant to go that way. But as he said, all course designers design greens to shed water. The idea being you can't have standing water. It's going to kill the green. So you have to put some sort of drainage in. right?
Mm-hmm,
So
right.
if you can look at that from afar and say, if it was pouring right now, what would this green look like? Where would the water be kind of, sliding off the green? That'll give you an idea of that slope. And by knowing that, you can know a little bit, and we're talking about, again, we're not talking about hitting the green. We're talking about how to get closer to that pin. And a big part of that is going to be knowing that slope. So if the green's running away from you, you can land the ball a bit short and allow it, to bounce and roll to get a little bit close. Or if the green is sloped back towards the fairway, which is often the case, you can consider playing that lower shot. And here too, that goes into what you were saying.
Yep.
Play that lower shot that bounces once or twice, and then stops because the uphill is going to automatically stop it. Versus you play that really high shot, and let's say you don't quite carry it to the pin, and you come up short. Now if it's really high and coming in steep, you're not going to get anything against that slope. It's either going to come backwards, down back towards you away from the pin, or it's going to stop where it is. So that's where you can kind of start to look at that, and you can start to say, how do I want to play this? Which way do I want to play it? And let that kind of go. Another thing, and this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about a minute ago about improving your aim. But when you want to really, if there's anywhere in your game you want to really lock in your aim and really aim precisely, it's with these wedge shots. If you get sloppy with your aim, if there's any area of your game where you're going to get really punished for it, it's here. And here's another thing. On the shorter wedge shots, let's say 50 yards and in, you're not on a shot like that. You're not going to, because it's not going to be a full swing shot. You're not going to produce too much of that side spin. So oftentimes a lot of us are used to playing whatever our natural shot shape is. Let's say it's a draw, and we aim a little bit right of the pin because we know the ball is going to move back. Well, that's because of that side spin that you impart on the ball when you take your swing. In this case, because it's a much slower swing, it's a little bit of a different swing. You're not going to be putting as much side spin on it. So if you start aiming, to the right, you're going to end up to the right. So this is where you can kind of aim and go after it a little bit more. This is something you can really work on the driving range. There's always that one kind of lonely flag on the driving range that's about 25 to 30 yards out, that nobody goes for.
Yeah, right.
Make that your friend. Work on that. Work on putting it as close as you can, and really work on the discipline of aiming. Pick a target on the range. A lot of us we work on our swing. I mean, that's what we think we're doing. We're working on our swing. So we're not even really focused on where the ball goes. We're just focusing on a specific, trying to make a specific swing. And then if it goes well, we're like, great. Or that's why a lot of us get tricked into thinking we play so much better on the range than versus out there on the course, because there's no reference point. You just think you hit it straight, but you weren't necessarily firing at a target like you are on a course. So this is where you want to be, take that accurate aim, make your swing, and then just kind of look at that performance on the range and try to get better and better at it. It's better than just kind of swinging away and not paying attention to it when you're on the range. But if you work on honing your aim there, it's gonna really help you on the course. And especially this area, it's like what we hear Jordan Spieth say, is like aim small, miss small. I think if there's any area that works, it's this. Pick very accurate targets when you're using your wedge, almost like you're putting. Read that green a little bit, see which way it's going to roll, pick a spot on the green, and then go for it.
I love how you said make that little 25-yarder your friend.
Yeah.
I agree, and I want to take it a step further if you can, and even if it means, I don't know, it's a little more trouble to do, find a grass range, because the more I practice these wedge shots from a grass range with bounce and steep, swings that I have, I get much more out of going the extra, 8 miles to the place that has the grass range, because like I said, you get that true wedge shot feeling from that tight lie that you're struggling from. Yeah. So that would be my advice there. Once I found a grass range locally near my near the office, it's just, it's easy to get to, and dude, I could just park myself there and hit those shots all day. No one's going to make fun of you for sitting there hitting those 25-yard shots. Trust me, especially when you're taking their money on the course.
That's exactly what you will be doing. That's right.
Exactly.
And it leads again to the next point here, which is reading your lie carefully. And it's really amazing in how many golfers seem to just ignore the lie of the ball when they're getting ready to play a shot. But the opposite is true of PGA Tour pros. They obsess over the lie. They're talking about it with their caddy, they're looking at the grain, they're looking at the type of grass, they're looking at the direction it's growing, they're looking how deep it is, things like that, and you need to be able to understand that and get a feel for it. And this is something that really comes with feel, is playing a lot of different lies. So if you can kind of think of each lie as a lesson, I think that's a way to learn on the job, so to speak. It's like on the job training, right?
Right.
You get out there and remember it. How did the ball exit this type of lie? So the next time you're there, you can say, okay, I've been here, and you have that little bit of confidence. So it doesn't really matter if it's the fairway or the rough. You still want to understand what that lie means and how the ball is going to fly through the air from a lie like that. A clean fairway lie, it's usually very easy to read. But what if the ball is sitting in a divot, or what if you're in some medium rough? You want to pay attention to how your shots react when you hit those. And again, if you have a grass range, and if you have a grass range that has some different cuts that you can work, on and practice from, that's a great thing to do. And you're never going to be able to perfectly predict the influence your lie will have on the ball, but you can find you'll guess, even more and more correctly. One good example of this, I always like hearing, when they have Phil Mickelson, kind of decompress his shots. There's a guy who knows how something's going to come out. It doesn't matter what the lie is. I remember when he talked about when he hit it off the cart path and understanding that lie and what the bounce was going to do and all those types of things. So there's a lot to it, that goes into it. But as you learn that, you'll find that you become a lot more accurate, and you're not as surprised by what the ball do. Like, I wasn't expecting it to take off like that, or whatever it may be. So, and then there's other factors that go into it. Weather, is it a wet lie? Is it dry? But as you learn that, you're going to be able to craft your shots better and better. And it just comes with time, comes with practicing it. But again, it's being mindful instead of doing it mindlessly, and just like trying to just get it out of the rough. Evaluate the lie. And even if you had a terrible shot, as long as you learned from it, I think you got something out of it, because you won't do it again. But if you're just pissed off and wrap your club around a tree and then just go out and do the same thing again the next time because you didn't learn anything from it, then what good does that do you? So.
Yeah, what's funny as you're saying this is kind of a funny philosophy. I wonder if there's anyone out there who kind of feels the same way. Because of the ability for me and for a lot of us who are young and powerful, you too, getting the ball down the fairway 280, 290, 300, it kind of gives me the confidence knowing that I can really just go for it here on the tee box. If I miss the fairway, I actually prefer to be in the rough. Weird, I know. But, on a 300, the average holes we're playing here, Frank, what are they? 350, 360, 370, the par fours. So if we're getting the ball down there 300, 290, I love that 70 to 80 yard shot from the rough. I'll take that all day, as opposed to cutting down to a 3-wood or 2 hybrid that I'm going to get down to 240 and a long shot in from that fairway. It's a funny thing to think about, this confidence I'm having with these wedges. I prefer to be 70 yards in the rough than 130, 140 out in a fairway. I mean, it's weird, man. I know.
But what? Actually, if you really decompress it, it makes sense, because think about it. If that's what you're used to doing, because that's where your shots usually end up, you've through time practiced hitting from the rough. So therefore, it makes sense for you to be more comfortable with that shot. If you don't have a ton of practice hitting a wedge from a tight lie, then it makes sense that you're not going to be as confident with it. Additionally, oftentimes, if the rough isn't that gnarly, it's sometimes good for a wedge, because you'll get a little bit of a prop up.
Yes.
But no two roughs are created equal. You get the rough like we had in Ridgewood. Nobody wanted to be in there.
Yeah, but we had no choice but to go for it with the distance we were playing.
I know, but that's the thing. As soon as we rolled in there, that's when club selection started to become like this huge, debacle, because where we would normally hit one wedge, it was just so thick. It was just grabbing that club and be like, shaving so much swing speed off it. You had to end up clubbing up. And then what happens if you got a flyer? Then you really flew the green. So it does, in a way, it does make sense, because it talks to that point, is saying like the more you practice, the more you'll get used to that lie. And I think you're very used to that lie. But if you go out and flip the script on it and really practice the tight lie, you might get familiar with that too, and then you'll be good either way. I'll
be good either way. Yeah, I don't know. I like that propped up, teed up little rough. Well,
that's why
I'm a little more confident.
Love that second cut when you just roll off the fairway, especially when it's moving slow and it just kind of like just it kind of sits up there on that grass like a tee. It's like, woof, you just go for it.
That's like, for me, that's the stuff, that first cut. That's, or what do you call it? The second cut, second cut.
Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever
I
it
always
is.
think like fairways first.
Fairways first.
Cut.
Yeah. In order of, yeah. So I think that, to me, that second cut is like the closest thing you get to a driving range mat, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It just feels that way when I strike the ball. I feel like the fairway's a little too tight. And again, I'm not knocking getting the ball in the fairway. I mean, that's the key of the game, right? Fairway to green. But I think for me, that's the closest thing. But I just need more practice on grass ranges. I mean, I've always been on mat ranges until I found this one recently, near my office. I wish I could spend more time there.
Especially if it's a grass range the tee box on the range is cut similar to the fairways that you're playing in style. If you can find that, then you have that a consistent lie that you can work on.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So then, kind of wrapping that up and going back to what we were saying before, this it's an important tip. It's something that I've been working on because it's newer to me. I'll be honest with you. I hadn't been playing this as smart as I should. And it actually goes way back to, I was playing in high school golf. And I remember there was one time when I was a freshman and I was playing in a match and I was teamed up with the senior who had a lot more experience than I did. And it was exactly this situation. I was about 60 yards out in the middle of the fairway, tight lie, looking right at the green. And, I hit my 60-degree wedge and made it rain up in the air, like it hitting the clouds,
Right.
And then it just kind of, it came down and just stopped on the green because it had come down such a steep angle, but it was still a long putt. I left myself like a 20-foot putt. And I remember my playing partner came over to me. He's like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, course management. Like he was trying to drill it into me. He goes, "You don't need to get it way up in the air like that. Whatever, the wind is affecting it up there, whatever it may be." He's like, you're looking right at it. There's nothing in the way. There's nothing you need to get up and over. He's like, play a nice lower wedge shot, bump and run, let it land. And how that green is going to roll. It's a predictable roll on the green. Let it roll up to the pin. And since then I've been trying to have that discipline. It was a hard lesson learned. This is an important thing. You want to look whenever you have those wedge shots, look for some low options before sending the ball high up into the air. It's not always going to be possible to play that low wedge. And it really depends on the design of the course. There might be obstacles in the way you have to get up and over. There might be unpredictable lies or undulations. But the reality is low wedge shots, they're easier to control than the high ones because there's less that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You play that lower wedge, it might feel a little awkward at first, but you will quickly get used to it when you see how many shots you're able to place up next to that pin. So, it can really, you can take your game to an entirely new level when you'll learn how to hit these precise shots. And it's going to be a game changer for you. So try that. Try looking at least presenting yourself with the options to go a little bit lower and see how it changes things for you. And that's something for sure. Let us know. Report back in the Facebook group, post something. Let us know if that works for you going a little bit lower.
Stingers and knockdowns.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. Keeping it low. We saw a lot of stingers at the PGA Championship this year.
We did, man. Yeah. A lot of those guys, they depend on those stingers.
They do. Mm-hmm. But this is something, and you'll see those guys too. If you watch them, just pay attention one weekend when you're watching and they're close in to the green, let's say 50 yards out and closer. You're not going to see them hitting these towering wedge shots. You're going to see them hitting these finesse shots that are a little bit lower. They hit the front of the green and kind of roll up towards the pin. You're going to see a lot of that. So keep an eye for that. And here's the thing. If you can really work on this, if you can hone this area of your game, all of a sudden, instead of trying to two putt from these bomber long distances, or try to get up and down from just off the green, you're going to start seeing yourself with more birdie opportunities. And that's what we all want to give ourselves. And you're not going to make all those putts. There's a chance though that a few of those are going to fall in. You're going to start putting those birdies on the card. So give it a try. I think it's going to work for you. If it works for you guys as much as it's been working for us lately, I think you're going to see some real improvement.
Big time. Totally agree.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so we've got a lot of good stuff coming up, like we talked about at the top of the show. So stay tuned for that. If you're not already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just Golficity, because we've been putting a lot more of our stuff there. We're going to trying to bring you guys more of the behind the scenes. Don't forget, the vlog all started because a lot of you guys were asking and saying we want to see more of what you guys are doing instead of just hearing about it at the end of each week on the podcast. So we're trying to bring that visual to you guys, and we've been having a ton of fun doing it. It's just great to turn the camera on when we're out there doing what we do.
Yep.
So make sure you guys check that out. Also follow us on Instagram, Snapchat. That's where we kind of get a little bit of fun throwing the informal stuff up in the stories. I'm sure we'll have a great story running tomorrow on both channels when we're down there at Golf and Body. So make sure you follow along with all that, and we'll see everybody again next week.